It's good to be back. It's good to see you tonight. We're going to continue the series. You see it right here, How to Ruin Your Life. One of those ways is to sit in the back of the service and never listen. That's one way to ruin your life. But really tonight, what we're going to do tonight is just a simple idea of dating. And you go, okay, I came in here and I'm not somebody that raised my hand. Hopefully a lot of what we talk about, especially towards the end, will really help you go, okay, this is principle that works in a relationship. It doesn't just work with my relationship as a dating person, but it works in all kinds of different ways. And then if you're married like I am, you ought to be able to apply some of it in the same structure. One or two won't fit, one or two will fit really well, and then you'll have to think through some other ones. But I just wanted you to kind of be able to handle that and go, okay, as I'm listening, what am I listening for? I'm not just listening for myself, but also I'll be a part of the community that walks with other people. And so maybe who was it just got those two books? He was about to get married, right? Yeah, Colby, you were about to get married. You probably want to pass those off to somebody else. This is kind of how that thing works. And so you pass off what you get. But a lot of you are probably sitting right in the middle of some of this conversation. And I hope it helps tonight for you to hear and for you to understand. And so how you ruin your life, you date like everybody else is where we're going to be tonight. So something that I love or have grown to love because my wife loves them is king cakes. And so you saw last week, if you came with us to After Eats, we had some king cakes in there. And so there was a first king cake, and then there was a second king cake. So when it comes to those things, I know exactly what I want. I've spent lots of money, had a lot of bad king cakes, had a lot of good king cakes, but if it comes down to something, I know I can just kind of look at it and go, yeah, I'm gonna like it. I don't know if you're gonna like it or not. I just know what it looks like when there's a good one because I've tasted a whole bunch of them, and I really enjoy that. And so I know mine, I want it to be kind of pastry. I want it to have a certain kind of icing. I want it to have cream cheese in it. Like I've got some of those things really down. I really know what I'm looking for. But for some of you may not. Like you've had a bad king cake experience, so you don't even want it. Or you had, like last week, if you came in later, the second king cake was from Walmart because it cost $8. And so you got the really dry, nasty king cake from Walmart but the first four were delicious. And so some of you never had one, so you may not even know where to start. Some of you have settled for something that's less than the best. And if you were to ask, I would go, oh, hey, try these three kind. Or I might even be really generous and I might buy you one and bring it to you and go, oh, well, you haven't decided. Maybe this will help you decide. But so what I could do is I could guide you to a good king cake. As young adults navigate the things in their life, the important stuff, like what do I want to do? Like where do I live? Who should I be? Like, what does the future hold for me? Like, here's something that we all need. We all need a really good guide. Like, we all need someone, a group of folks that will go, hey, here's the way. Hey, maybe this isn't so great. And so, with dating, for me, because dating's no different, I had no guide. And so, it's not really because people didn't try to help me. People didn't try to help. My parents in the back, I'm sure I can't remember that far back really, but I'm sure they tried to help me out a little bit. But I had no guide. Maybe you were there a little bit. But so for me, from 15 to 25, I dated mostly like everybody else. And so my life was, I didn't have I did a little research, and so I didn't have anything that I saw, which I need to have this conversation with you guys later, anything that I saw that was happening on TikTok currently. But I didn't have any ad for myself. I didn't have any of those. I just had peers, right? And like everybody else, you weren't swiping, you weren't doing that. For me, from 15 to 25, it was just peers with bad principles instead of godly principles. And so the peers didn't know what they were doing, and quite honestly, nobody really did know what they were doing who was around me. And so what did that do for me? And what it did for me is it caused hurt and pain. And so as I went through dating from 15 to 25, there was hurt and pain. I was also distracted from God's mission. I also caused others to even question maybe the message that I was giving them. Like the message that was about Jesus, because of the way in which I was living this life like everybody else. So what happened is eventually I realized that what I was doing was going nowhere. And maybe in some of these ways, as you've walked through some of these, how do you ruin your life? Like as we've talked about some of these subjects, you've gone, oh man, I realize I'm not really going anywhere if we're talking about this. And so tonight, when we think about this dating, I'm hoping you're going, Because for me, in my early 20s, I was still dating like a middle schooler. And like most middle schoolers shouldn't date. Or like at least with a 25-year-old with a middle school attitude shouldn't date, right, Jonathan? You know what I'm saying? Like you know middle schoolers, and I know right, Michael? They shouldn't do that kind of stuff. And so like when I was like, I just had this thinking about God, and I wasn't thinking about what God wanted for me. I was thinking about what I wanted for me. So tonight we're going to kind of do two things. And the first one is going to be this, is we're going to look at dating and kind of look at these several places, like seasons that you can be in. And then after we get done with those seasons, I'm going to give you 7 principles that come straight from a guy named Ben Stewart. And so it's going to be his ideas with my comments. And so I want you to see those. And then I want to start a conversation, because I think where the answers and the application and the other stuff will come in the support of the community that we talk about at the end. So what direction are you headed? In which direction are you headed? Are you headed towards ruin? Or are you headed towards richness when we talk about dating? In the 1900s, this is from chapter 2 of that book, Outdated, and so or chapter 1 actually. It says this. It's from a guy named Larry. I don't know how to say his last name, Getlin. And so it says this: in the 1900s, when it first came into fashion, the term dating was originally used as a euphemism for prostitution, largely due to the confusion because the two practices seemed so similar. That was a wild statement to me. That was an absolute, that was just, it was foreign to me, in the idea that like dating, because I just really hadn't researched that idea. I didn't talk about dating a lot. When you talk about dating, I was a youth minister for a long time. When you talk about dating with youth, you just basically say, don't do it, and then you're done. But like, you just don't talk about it a lot because you let their parents. And so when I'm thinking about this stuff, I'm going, dude, the history, it's just not that old. So what do you do with that? You know, there's a lot of things that we do that aren't that old, that, side note, that we really believe in and we really support and we really spend our time with. But man, how long do they last? How far have they been thought through? Do they really fit in God's plan? So this one was just weird to me, because it said it's a new idea. Most people throughout history managed to live, love, and marry successfully without ever dating. I met a missionary the other day. It was a couple of Thursdays ago, and I was in there and I was listening to him. And this guy, about your age, he's like 26 years old. He had been on a mission trip a long time ago from Oregon. He met up with a guy in China, and he went there and caught this vision for mission and the ends of the earth. And what he did then is he moved as an engineer to India. And while he was in India, he married like a national, like someone who was from India, who was an English teacher, with the hopes, not just the hopes, but he was wanting to meet somebody that was a believer in there and go, we are going to serve another unreached place. And so what he does, like as he's doing this, is the craziest part for me was they got married in a month. So like, because of his culture and because of where he was, he proposed and they got married 1 month later. And so like, I'm meeting him and he's been married for like maybe 6 months now. And like, it's just a wild conversation because it's so foreign to what we would do, right? It's so foreign to like, he was up on stage at USC because he's ready to get married. I'm like, I'm about to say, you going to get married? Like my whole message is about to be like, go in or get out, right? And you just told the whole thing beforehand. So there's not much at all dating in the Bible. Like when you look through that thing, there's not like, hey, these guys dated. Hey, watch how this works itself out. Like you get to see, like we had a Song of Solomon conversation. We've done that. Go back and listen to some of what Justin said there. But like, it's not a lot, but we culturally experience this, and there's a way in which we do. So like, how do I ask somebody out? Like, what do I do when she ghosts me? Like, should I date people? Should I not? Some people are in a whole camp of a different like courtship and other ideas, which I want to actually talk about. If I do, who? How should I do it? And like, am I getting any of this right? Maybe you've been in am I getting any of these ideas, any of these things right? Do you actually know what you're doing? So the world is looking this way. The world is looking to find out, is there anybody that they like enough that they can marry? I mean, I was in the world for a long time, trying things out, hoping with hopelessness, basically, just hoping. There's a lot of pass fail. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of swiping left, right, up, down, whichever way you want to swipe. There's a lot of all those kinds of things. And so tonight, when we look at dating in every season from single to married, what I want us to do is, even though there's just a little bit of those ideas, some of those things, there's a lot of wisdom in the principles that God gives us that we can apply toward an abundant life that would be lived in relationship, an abundant life in God's way and for our relationships instead of towards ruin. So here are some of those categories that I want us to look at. And so here's what we'll do is we'll do not dating, we'll do dating with a deadline, and we'll do dating forever. I just want you to kind of rethink some of those things, and I want you to kind of maybe see those from a different direction, because I hope that these principles will really kind of work their way out for all of us. And so as you see that, you'll see like this singleness, you'll see a dating, you'll see a engaged, and you'll see a married when I make comments through the end. So let's talk about the first one, not dating. Like this is the singleness idea. I wouldn't stand over there. I don't know if you asked that question. But how many of you are single? Like you know, I love it. Thank you. I didn't actually ask the question, guys. But you raise your hand, or you're thinking inside, or you're doing some of those things. You say, here, this outdated spends a whole chapter on this one little singleness idea. And like when I was reading that, he made a comment that just kind of blew my mind. He said, "Did you wake up single today? Then you have the gift of singleness." I was like, man, that's kind of harsh and good at the same time. Like there's a lot of freedom in that. And there's a lot of like, oh man, come on, man. Like you have to call me out like that, right? Like he makes a comment where it's like not that's one of the things that you want to be able to give a refund sometimes or have a receipt, because the world has taught you something that may not be correct. And so there's a season in there that's a singleness that has a lie and a truth. And so here's that lie and truth from Outdated. The lie is being single is a waiting period for something better. The truth is something better is waiting for you right now. The lie is being single is a waiting period for something better. But the truth is something better is waiting for you right now. When you look through some of these texts and some of these people in the New Testament, they're really fun. 1 Corinthians 7:7, I wish that all of you were as I, single. Is a Pauline statement. And then you see in Matthew 19, some are called to a life of celibacy. You see in 1 Timothy 4:6-16, there's this whole passage that Paul is telling to Timothy, and he's working through some of these things that he would do and he would be about. And actually, let's read some of those. Starting in 4 verse 6, it says, "In pointing out these things to the brethren, you will be a good servant of Christ Jesus, constantly nourished on the words of faith and the sound doctrine which you have been following, but have nothing to do with the worldly fables fit for old women." I love that. "On the other hand, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness, for bodily discipline is of little profit, but godliness is profitable for all things, since it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. It is a trustworthy statement, deserving full acceptance." And they just go on. It reads all the way down to 16, but there's this place that you're seeing. He's giving him this thing. He's going, look, there is a way in which you live this life. There is something that you would do, that you are not broken, you are not incomplete, you are not less in your singleness. You actually have leverage. To date like everybody else is to run from singleness. Don't miss that. To date like everybody else is to run from singleness. And maybe some of us need to walk in it a little longer. Use your gift while you've got it. You'll never have more margin to leverage for the gospel. I'm going to call him out because Andrew Rock said this earlier, and we were in a discussion talking about what we do and where we go and the things, and he goes, and he just made a statement about busyness that I hear from everybody else. I hear from all of us. And then the married people in this room go, "You aren't busy. Try finding busy." And then you ask, I don't know if anybody else but me, and then the people with kids in this room go, "You aren't busy. Try some busy." And there's just this idea that, man, I need to do something else down the road in order to actually start to live. And what I want to remind you of as we have a dating conversation is that in your singleness, there's greatness to be had. And God would use you. So what do you do, right? What do you do in that? JP, this author of Outdated, said this. I just loved it because like I would love to have heard this and then walk back to 22 and be able to do some of these things. He says these things. If I were single again, I would take an international trip at least once a year to take the gospel to the dark places of the earth. Amen. If I were single again, I would be a light in corporate America. Like I would use every day of my singleness at my job to like share the gospel with people. He said I would belong to a church, and not just in the way that I attended sometimes, but in the way that I was a member and I gave and I served it and I was under the authority, so I grew. He said I would live in community. And he was like, not just live like in community where I come to some stuff and do some of those kinds of things, but where I actually live with other brothers and sisters in Christ. And we actually lived out the one another's together. And we actually shared a lot of our stuff so that we could be more generous and give it away. Like in your singleness you have, unless you're just tracking for the future and going, oh, that's going to be so much better than what I've got right now. Now, what a great margin to leverage that you have at this moment. You'll never have more of it. Dating is that second one. So not dating. I wrote down this. I'm not even sure that I can define this one. This was actually the hardest one in the four for me to define. Is the one that actually says dating, because every year I think there's like a DTR for the term dating because all the words change and all the rules kind of change. It's like you got to do this, or if you're doing this, or if you're not doing this, or I don't know, or who's dating, who's not dating. And I was just proud of you guys that actually raised your hand, because somebody next to you at some case was probably like a couple weeks ago going, are they dating? Are they not dating? Like a couple months ago, right? Or maybe you hadn't been sitting together, or hadn't been, are they dating? Are they not dating? And like you've got some of those little things. So that was the hardest for one of me to think through. And so like I told you earlier, I actually was reading some of those TikTok trends, and I wasn't watching them, but I was reading some of them and that have been over like the last 2 years, and actually some of them kind of scared me. I was like, you do what? Like that was how we engage, or how we watch, or what we're seeing, or what people are telling you to do? Knowing this, dating to date without marriage in view is not the design. Know this one thing. Like when we think about dating to date without marriage in view is not the design. It can be dangerous, and it can wreak havoc on those who participate regularly. So man, we gotta think about this. The next one is dating with a deadline. So there's this place where you move, right? There's the singleness, there's the dating that we're gonna talk about a lot in a minute, and then there's this dating with a deadline. So now we know, like this isn't just like you've said you haven't said I do, but like you said this. You said here's the ring, then you said here's the wedding date, and then you actually have RSVPs, like things sent out. Like this is a legitimate thing, and you're making arrangements to like seal the deal on this thing. Like it's all the way, and it's pretty close, and like we're doing it. This is the dating with a deadline. And then the last one is dating forever, which is you said I do, and you've committed to each other till death do you part, for better or for worse, sickness and in health. Those that God has put together, let no man separate. I don't know that we clarify those terms enough. I don't know if we have thought through what it is to do the one that is maybe the hardest to define. And so I hope tonight what we'll do, since everyone is in one of these categories, right? You may even be gone all the way through the categories and you're single again. But we're in one of these categories, and I believe that the principles that come will help us out. Nobody wants to ruin their life. We've talked about that a lot. So here comes biblical wisdom and application. If something doesn't apply to you, then take it and apply to something else. So 7 principles for dating. Come from some ideas of Ben Stewart and his principles, and I'm just going to apologize for this. After we walk through some of these principles in this talk, I apologize to whoever breaks up after it's over. I will say you're welcome, though, and then I will also apologize to the person that I put on so much pressure that they get in trouble because they haven't asked somebody to marry them. So like those are the 2 things that I know when I get done with this thing, the relationships are there and they're on the precipice of something, like either way. And like when I say stuff, I'm going to make conflict for you. So I'm sorry, but you needed it. So here's the first one. For dating, how to date, like what that looks like. Remember, we're going to do context of all. So how you date, the first one is prayerfully. And so you don't enter a relationship without God. Like, you walk out of here with nothing else that I give you tonight. Don't enter a relationship without God. If you're already in one, hit reset and work on it. You know what I'm saying? Like this isn't these things that we're doing are not for shame. They're not for those kinds of things. But I want you to hear them and go, okay, well, if you're not saved and you're not walking with the Lord in a way, then you shouldn't be in a relationship. You can't ask him to lead and guide and authority, and so it's probably not time for you to date. The reason we're prayerfully entering this thing is because God has good for those who believe. So when you look at Romans 8:28 and other places, he works all these things together for our good. And so you're going, okay, how in the world do I get engaged with this big concept of him working all things out? Man, I'm communicating with him. I'm asking him. I'm going to him. I'm trusting him with these things. This is what a good dating rich relationship looks like. That's prayerfully entered. You prayed alone, you prayed with friends, you prayed with your parents. Man, you have this I'm not going to lean on my own understanding, but the Proverbs, I'm going to lean on, it's just not my own understanding. It's not the understanding of my peers. It's not the understanding of whatever I'm watching. It's not the latest way or funnest thing it's God. You're the biggest part of this whole relationship. Ultimately, you're getting together to glorify God and to multiply and fill the earth. If you didn't understand the concept as we walk from single to dating to engaged to married and beyond, that the purpose of the people of God on this place is to worship the God who created them, and so therefore we obey one of his commands, which has some of us going into a multiplication way. Not all of us, but some of us. There's an obvious gift of singleness. But for some of us, there is that way. And what we do in relationship is we enter these relationships with God for the glory of God. Man, what a good place to be. God, the biggest part of the whole relationship. Second one is this. First one is prayerfully. Second one is initiate with clarity. There are two or three in here that I just go, man, we get these so wrong. You might go, man, if you ain't praying, you ain't praying. I need you in. Let's go. That's one of those fundamental disciplines of Christianity. I mean, if tonight's the night that starts for you, come on, let's start it. Don't just pray about who you're going to date. Pray about some other stuff too, right? That's pretty basic. But initiate with clarity. Here comes the Ephesians 4, speak the truth in love and be honest. When this dating thing happens, without clarity, what happens is expectations and dreams begin to run wild. And I don't know if you've been in any of these or you've been outside of these, but what happens is they run wild and then you leave people broken. And everybody that, when we were thinking about how this thing works, when the ruin really comes in, when you really see this thing breaking down, is that everybody dates like this. They date with ambiguity. And so what they put in there's a lot of questions that the other person can't answer. They put in there a lot of things that I don't want to put my foot in too far, but I don't want to kind of go this, and I don't want to do that, because if I do that, I'm saying yes to some things, but really I'm not ready to say yes to all of it. And so let's just kind of get in and let's kind of get out. You initiate with clarity. It's a simple practice. You say things like this. The word date. You say things like this, girls and sometimes boys, no. Hey, you want to go on a date? No. Be clear with people. Don't go on a date that you don't want to go on a date with them. It's just, when you initiate with clarity, what you do is you don't ever use the word hang out. You don't ever do, or whatever the relative term is that remains undefined and semi-committed, right? You just don't use those phrases. If you're walking with Jesus and you're leveraging, to the glory of God, your relationships with other people, what you're doing is you are initiating with clarity and you're staying clear all the way through. Ben talks about, Ben Stewart, the guy that does these 7, he talks about Ruth and Boaz, which you need to just go listen to that if you can. I don't have time to go into the story, but he does this little thing where he does this in it. And so go for it, watch that. And so here's the thing though. He talks about we both have, like both girl and boy have the responsibility to be clear as we do the dance of dating. So what do I do if I am walking in a way that leads to richness in dating? I'm eliminating the drama, right? Married people, unmet, unspoken expectations and unresolved conflict will kick your butt. If you started this thing with clarity and you got to the place where you said, yes, what are you doing now? Because it should continue in the way that we would be honest with one another and that I would encourage you to continue with this clarity. The third one is this. Oh man, this may be my favorite one. Date with autonomy. Date with autonomy. You go, what is that? It's a self-sufficiency, a self-rule, an independence. You go, Jared, I thought that's kind of backwards. Isn't that like counterintuitive? Is that like what? That kind of sounds crazy. If you're going, hey, we're getting together, but you're telling me that we're supposed to date with autonomy. Remember, I didn't write these, but Ben did. But this is the one I agree with absolutely 200%. I've been telling people forever to do this. The world says cohabitate, try out sex, see if you're compatible. Church people say, start deep devotions together and get real intimate in the ways that you talk about Jesus and like really cuddle. You know what I'm saying? Why do all Christian couples, why do almost all of them come to me and go, hey, Jared, what devotional should we start? And I say, don't start a devotional. Do your own dadgum devotional. There's a shared opportunity there that comes later, but if you run into that too early, you don't date with autonomy, and what happens is you jack things up. Guys, this principle right here is gold if you want to grab it. Here's why, because he taught me something that I never knew. So watch it. Ben talks about these categories of people in the Bible. Look at them. Unequally yoked, Christian and non-Christian, right? Brothers and sisters, Christians. Husbands and wives, married Christians. What's not there? The boyfriend and girlfriend. Dating is not there. So how do we navigate what he calls the interim space? How do you navigate? I think that perfectly defines what we're talking about. Job, but not job. School, but I'm out of school. First job, but I want something else. Got a little money, but not a lot of money. There's all this interim space. And with dating, we might let that go for 5, 10, 15 years. See, what he says is to date is more than brothers and sisters, but less than husbands and wives. Don't miss that. To date is more than brothers and sisters, but less than husbands and wives. And everybody dates expecting some responsibility and some benefits that are not in other relationships. And that ain't good. Man, Ben was killing it right there. Husbands and wives, you don't need to put them in the friend zone. When you're thinking about it, you are husbands and wives, married Christians. Oneness is a thing. If you're on the spectrum from singleness to dating to engaged, I want you to look. There is a married couple, and when you see them, there should be a oneness that is after one thing, and that's the glory of God. And this oneness is worked for, and this oneness is good. You remember Solomon from Justin, and so I just tell you to get busy being one. This principle is destroyed in marriage. The autonomy leaves. And so you stop going your way and doing all the things that you like and you want to do and trying to separate what's happening. And what you do is you learn to walk as one for the glory of God. And there's a self-denial and a selflessness that comes in that you don't learn before that. This principle, for those of you that are dating still, will guard you from all kinds of trouble and hurt. Girls, please listen to this one. If you want to share more with the person that you're dating, make a real commitment. If you want to share more, physically, if you want to share more emotionally, if you want to share more spiritually, man, make a commitment. Man, if you've been in that thing for 2 weeks and you got elders and the church and your friends and your parents all saying, why don't you marry that kid? Why don't you marry that girl? Marry him. And marry him next week. Guys, here's the thing. Do you trust God or do you trust the way that you figure things out? Do you trust all the things that you got to maneuver around because if I don't finish school or if I don't have a job or if I don't do these things, where's the faith? In some cases, make sure you hear me. I don't think that that's a smart idea. But we are leaning way too far in the direction that gets us in trouble dating a long time and dating in and out and moving back and forth. Amen. Genesis 2:24 says this. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. It goes from something that's out here to something that's like this. And we're going to look at that in this next one. Next one is date with purity. Guys, you're lucky because it's 8 o'clock, and so I'm going to run through the rest of these. But purity. Guys, this never gets old-fashioned. I'm old enough to have done true love weights and purity rings and all kinds of weird stuff that just made people feel bad. And here's what I need you to hear, is that this thing didn't get old and it didn't change. God still says flee sexual immorality. 1 Corinthians 6:18 is one place that you can look at that, but then you can look and you can see that raised way above. And so that's in our mind and in our heart and all over the place. And so don't miss this, while sex is good, fornication is not part of God's plan. And that has been falsely told and twisted to you. But sex is great. And it has a design. Fornication, sex outside of marriage, is not a part of God's plan. I'll tell you this, married folks, to date my wife with purity is ever before me. It doesn't stop. This is one of those myths or things that you're like, oh no, when I do this, you ever thought this? I'm saying when I start dating and I'm not going to be when I'm engaged and I'm not going to be interested in anybody else, or there's not ever going to be any, when I get married, I'm just going to be locked in, it's going to be all good. I'm not ever going to have any temptation of any kind anywhere because there are no other attractive people out there after you get married, right? That's just how the thing works. Man, date with purity. I continue to date my wife and strive for purity. Now, I want you to hear this, that shame is not my goal in this moment. If you're hearing purity and you're going, man, far from it, welcome to the club. My goal would be to say to you that restoration, to walk in the ways of the Creator, should be our goal when we meet Him. If you hadn't met Him tonight, there is a pure and holy way. There is a way in which no other man walked. There is a way in which the Creator has established Himself and His creation has fallen from. There is a rebellion in us that wants to walk in a corrupt way. But there is a pure design and a way that God has created us to live. See, He built this thing, like this thing. He built it. He knows how it works. So when you're thinking about singleness and dating and engaged and marriage, let him guide the access to it. Let him guard your mind and heart against the enemy. This is purity. 5 is courtesy like courtship. Simply, there's a grace and kindness that goes in with all dating. You go, okay, how am I, like there's a lot of times and there's a lot of places and there's a lot, I don't know if you've ever or experienced a breakup, if you've ever experienced something that happens, or you didn't even start dating, but you kind of started dating, or you didn't start dating, and then all of a sudden, what happens after you're not dating anymore, or you got into some semi-conversations and you didn't really do that, or like you're a married couple or you're an engaged couple and you had that first boom, we gonna fight. And there is, in Proverbs 11, a gracious and good woman attains honor. Proverbs 19, what is desirable in a man is his kindness. I know that might just shoot right over you. But man, as you're entering this thing, as you're walking in this way, as you're trying to navigate that thing that is the interim space in between this idea of singleness, this idea of not dating, and this idea of marriage, as you're trying to navigate this in between, there's a lot of things that we should think through. And you can't think about it by yourself. That's why number 6 is community. Community does this, is it doesn't let us live in isolation. This is really where I need all of you to help change the game of the church. I couldn't see the hands when he asked if you listened to any sermons on dating or if you'd heard any. I didn't see the hands on that or you read anything about that. But I do think that we're very under-informed and way too easily rolling with everybody else on this one. Community, we need to provide a better place for people to be known so that they can share and be seen and we can help each other. So if you've walked through some of these things and you're going, man, I've experienced some of this stuff, man, where is the conversation? But when dating begins, man, what I would love to see is a community that looked like this. When somebody starts to date, like when Jonathan starts to date or Micah starts to date or Miles starts to date, maybe they are dating, I don't know, but they walk in the room and they walk into Yala, they walk into their church and they walk in and you're like, oh, hey, we got to meet. I want you to meet all of these people. I want you to talk to all of these people. I want you to see them. I want you to see me. I want you to be known in this place. Because what the community does is the community has the ability, like Proverbs 11:14 says, is where it says this, where there is no guidance, people fall, but in abundance of counselors, there is victory. And so what you get to do when there's a community of people is you get to walk folks in and people get to speak into your life. And it's not just an upfront kind of message from some weird old guy, but what it happens to be is it's some of your peers that are going, no, this is the way and it's good, it's God's way. I heard it in Yala and then I started to study it and I started to listen to a podcast and let me help you with your dating life. Awesome. Come on. Married folks, marriage is so hard. Not hard because the idea is bad. Hard because I'm bad. Hard because I'm selfish. Hard because I want my own way. Hard because there's all kinds of ways that I've rerouted and reworked who I am and what I want. Married folks, it's hard. So man, if you're attending Yala or a church and you're just attending it and you're not in community, let us help you grow. Like the community that you now have because you're a married couple, because you get to hang out together all the time and you get to spend time together and you get to pick out your house or you get to pick out your whatever, you buy food, you go to Target together, you do all the little things together, you always have a date, you always get to eat, you always have it. Man, you got to grow together to be able to see the goodness of other couples living in the richness as they follow God. Man, that's community. The last one I'll give you is this. It's patiently. You date patiently. And when he said that, I thought, what in the world, patiently? Like I thought you just picked one out and that didn't work out, you picked out the next one, right? Like that's what I thought. If you wanted to get out, you got out. And if you wanted to get in, that was me, 15 to 25. Like you just go after it. You just figure it out. Like that's trusting God, right? Eventually God's going to work it out and you're going to get the right one. makes these two comments that just blew my mind. When you know, waste no time, Ben Stewart. When you know, waste no time. You go, that's not patiently. Watch the next one he says. Go as fast as you can, but as slow as you must. Single, dating, engaged, married. Don't matter what you are. God should guide. Single, dating, engaged, married. Doesn't matter who you are. The biblical community should be supporting. Those things happen, we flourish together. We rub up against each other, and we encourage. We spur one another on to good deeds. And man, we model for the rest of the world, and we reflect what it is to love Jesus. Prayer for us tonight is just simply this. We're going to pray is that we would date like nobody else so that people can find a community like nobody else, so that we honor God like nobody else. And maybe a few things need to change in your life so you can start walking that way.